All right, here we go. Today we're going to take a look at the French Revolution, and we're going to do this in multiple parts. So today we're only going to look at part one. First off, we need to look at how French society was divided prior to the French Revolution. In 1789, France, like the rest of Europe, used an outdated social system that dated back to the Middle Ages. Under the social order of the ancient regime, everyone in French society was divided into three social classes or estates. These three social classes were as follows. The first estate was comprised of the clergy, the second estate was comprised of the nobility, and the third estate was everybody else. So the first estate, who are the clergy? The clergy are the priests, the bishops, the cardinals, and other church officials. So during the Middle Ages, the church had gained vast amounts of wealth and influence throughout Europe. In 1789, the majority of the French clergy still held enormous amounts of wealth and privilege. The church owned 10% of the land, they collected tithes, and paid no taxes. High-ranking church officials lived in luxury while small parish priests lived like most peasants, but they still were not required to pay taxes. The second estate. In 1789, the French nobility were the descendants of the noble knights in the Middle Ages. Though Kings Richelieu and Louis XIV abolished the nobles' military power, they were able to keep their social privileges. Some of these social privileges included positions in the military, such as officers, court positions, and also church officials. Though the nobility were exempt from paying taxes, many struggled financially, especially while trying to maintain their social status or their rock star lifestyle. The third estate. The third estate was the most diverse social class in France. At the top of this group was the bourgeoisie, or the wealthy middle class. The bourgeoisie consisted of bankers, merchants, doctors, lawyers, journalists, and even professors and teachers. The bulk majority of the third estate consisted of rural peasants. Some of these rural peasants were prosperous landowners, while the rest were just common day laborers, the ones doing all the dirty work that nobody else wanted to do. So we're going to see several things that lead up to the French Revolution. And the first thing we're going to look at is the economic problems that France was going through. So despite the social unrest against the old order, France was still spending a lot of money, and they were nearing financial ruin due to this. And this is done by deficit spending. Deficit spending is when you spend more money than you make. So Louis XIV left France deeply in debt after financing the 7 Years' War and the American Revolution. Furthermore, the royal court continued to live a lavish lifestyle by borrowing more and more money. Though Louis XVI continued the spending habits of his predecessors, he did hire Jacques Necker, a financial expert, to help reduce the national debt. However, Necker was later fired after suggesting to tax the first and second estates. So in order to make up that deficit spending, Jacques Necker said, hey, why don't you just tax the first and second estates, and then we'll have more income. But as we see, that didn't work out too well. The Estates General. So next, we're going to look at the Estates General and the events that conspired there that lead us into the French Revolution. And this is one of the main parts where the French people begin to say, we've had enough. So first off, the Estates General was the legislative body comprised of representatives from the three estates and had been inactive for 175 years. So for 175 years, no king had summoned the Estates General. In 1789, Louis XVI summoned the Estates General to meet at Versailles after increasing pressure from the first and second estates. And really the reason they wanted to meet was that they were afraid that they were going to be taxed. In preparation for the Estates General, King Louis XVI asked each of the three estates to prepare cahiers or notebooks of grievances. The list of grievances included, but was not limited to, the following: fairer taxes, freedom of the press, and regular meetings of the Estates General. The Estates General convened in May of 1789, and here traditionally voting was done through the respective estates. After deliberation and voting among themselves, each estate was given one vote. Historically, this system gave an unfair advantage to the first and second estates. The first and second estates always voted together, and they left that third estate out to fend for themselves. The first and second estates only voted for something if it benefited them directly. At the 1789 Estates General, the third estate wanted the entire legislative body to meet together and count votes by head, or a majority vote. In June of 1789, after weeks of a stalemate, delegates of the Third Estate declared themselves the National Assembly. They recognized that they were not going to be able to get anything done in the Estates General. Nothing else new was going to happen or change. So they separated themselves and declared a new legislative body. A few days later, the members of the National Assembly were locked out of their meeting hall, and actually guards were posted at the doors. They moved the meeting to a nearby tennis court and took the famous tennis court oath. By taking the oath, they swore to never separate and to meet wherever the circumstances might require until we have established a sound and just constitution. Louis XVI was forced to recognize the legitimacy of the National Assembly after reform-minded clergy and nobles joined their ranks. The storming of the Bastille. On July 14, 1789, rumors ran through the streets of Paris that royal troops were going to occupy the city and they were going to just take over. So in response, more than 800 Parisians assembled outside the Bastille and demanded weapons and gunpowder, which they believed to be stored inside. The commander of the Bastille refused to open the gates and opened fire on the crowd. After a short battle, the enraged mob broke through the gates. After entering the Bastille, the mob killed the commander of the Bastille and 5 guards as well. They also released a handful of prisoners. Once inside, they realized that, hey, there's not any weapons or gunpowder in here. Oops. But lucky for them, the Bastille became a symbol to the people of France, representing their stand against the abuse of the monarchy. The conflict surrounding the Bastille became a wake-up call for Louis XVI. And today, the French have celebrated Bastille Day as their national day of independence since 1880. Here we have the question of the day, and that question is, what 3 events eventually lead to the French Revolution? Also, don't forget to read and take notes over lesson W.3 on ck12.org. Y'all have a good day.